Hey, welcome back to Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. It's a lot more empty here than it was the last time I was talking to you from here because Petit Le Mans is 2 days in the rear view. So what am I doing standing in the support pit at Road Atlanta? Well, today was a historic day for IMSA as it was the debut of the new prototype class that will debut in 2023 for the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship GTP. Now, if you've been paying attention for a while, you will have already known that this class has kind of already always been known as LMDH. The H stands for hybrid. There were 3 manufacturers testing today: Acura, Cadillac, and BMW. All 3 cars hybrid powered, but don't fret, don't worry. We had 3 unique, loud, and interesting race cars to talk about today, and we have a stacked video for you today because we did interviews, you're going to have my analysis, and you're going to hear these cars with your own ears and see them with your own eyes from the shots me and my camera guy Kyle got throughout the day. It was a fantastic day here at Road Atlanta. I have to say, I was pinching myself throughout the day because, as you guys know, this is one of my favorite racetracks in the world. I've never had the privilege of being here with race cars running when it's this empty, especially when they're cars that are debuting or at least testing for next year. New, exciting race cars. But we did have a little bit of drama today as well to talk about. So in this video, I'm going to break down each of the 3 manufacturers. And we're going to start with the manufacturer that was perhaps the fastest, but also perhaps the most fragile, and that is Acura. Their new LMDH is powered by a 6-cylinder turbocharged engine that is similar but not the same to the 2024 or whenever they get those regulations out IndyCar engine. It's much lower revving than that engine we saw in early April at Indianapolis, but I think it sounds pretty good, and it certainly makes quite a noise. However, the speed that it showed today, and we were told that LMDH was going to be slower than DPI, at least as far as I can tell, and I was doing some stopwatching myself. The fastest lap I saw was a 110-ish, somewhere around there. It sounds like, though, at some point during this day, the DPI car, or the LMDH GTP cars, got around a 109, which would have been the fastest lap in Petit Le Mans on Saturday. So they haven't really slowed down all that much, and you have to think that as well the teams are trying to not show all that they got. So if you're expecting slower prototypes in IMSA next year, I think you might have another thing coming. But that speed came at a cost for Acura. They had both of their cars here, Wayne Taylor Racing and Meyer Shank Racing. And unfortunately, near the end of the first session, there was an accident involving the Meyer Shank Racing car. Now, Tom Blomqvist was at the wheel, and he was okay, but we were told by a Honda representative that the suspension in the front of the vehicle failed. It caused the crash and caused the car to go straight on. Because of this, for a safety, a quite right safety call, they pulled the 10 car for the rest of the day. If one part from one batch is the problem, then all the parts in that batch are going to be the problem, and that could affect testing for both Wayne Taylor Racing and Meyer Shank Racing. There's supposed to be 2 more days of testing at Road Atlanta after this. So if Acura does find that that was a part failure caused by a manufacturing defect, then they are going to be on the back foot heading into December's Daytona test ahead of the Rolex 24. Now, let's go back to happier times with Acura. Here's the sound of the new Acura prototype. And now we'll talk a little bit about the new kid on the block, BMW. Well, they're not really new. Perhaps they're a bit of a a reunion, a family reunion. In the very first couple of Petit Le Mans, there were BMW prototypes racing at this racetrack, but BMW hasn't had a prototype program in about 20 years. The BMW that was testing today is the first car that will race for an overall championship in IMSA from BMW for a very, very long time. Very exciting program. Turbocharged V8 on that car, Dallara chassis. I guess I should have also mentioned that the Acura was an Orica. The BMW, the sound I would say is pretty close to what you would expect from a BMW V8 engine. My cameraman Kyle mentioned that it kind of reminded him of the big BMW M8 GTE car that raced for a while. I personally kind of thought it was a lot like the M3 GT2 car, albeit quite a bit quieter because of the turbocharged attached to that V8. It actually, that engine in that BMW, began life as a DTM motor about 15 years ago. And so BMW took it off the shelf, dusted it off, put some turbochargers on it, and shoved it in the back of a Dallara chassis. What also is interesting is another manufacturer we'll talk about later in this video, Cadillac, is also using the Dallara chassis. So you have aero, engines, suspensions, all different, same chassis from two manufacturers. I think that's very interesting and kind of a proof of concept of the aero kit stuff that IndyCar was trying to do. We actually did talk to a driver from Cadillac, we did talk to a driver from Cadillac, you'll hear that later, but we talked to a driver from BMW, and if you've been paying attention to the American open wheel ladder system for a while, you'll know the name Connor DeFilippi. He is one of the few, the proud, the BMW factory drivers. I think he's got an interesting perspective.
Yeah, I mean, going to a high downforce car, everything becomes, you have to be kind of dancing on the pedals, right? Every little input is exaggerated because you're going faster. Just because you have more downforce doesn't mean you can be more aggressive necessarily. You're really kind of floating on the edge all the time. So, a lot of the GT cars, you can be more aggressive with the brake and you can trail brake into the corners, but in a high downforce car, it's not quite the same. Obviously, you can brake really hard initially because you have the downforce, but obviously you lose that downforce, which then you lose performance for braking, so you have to kind of release the brake maybe quicker than you would in a GT car. So that's just one thing that you kind of have to adapt to, and obviously the physical aspect as well is certainly a lot more than a GT car. So there's certain things that as a driver you have to adapt, and over the next couple tests over the off season I'll have time to get more comfortable doing that.
Speaking specifically about the BMW GTP car, are there any quirks or things you discovered about this particular machine that you're kind of opening your eyes and going, oh my God, this is different?
Yeah, well, I think just getting back in a prototype, it's significantly stiffer than a GT car. So I think getting used to the movement as of now. I think there's still a lot of things we can do to get it a little easier to drive and calmer to drive, but unfortunately that's not really the focus right now. We're just trying to log miles and get some wear on the parts. So I think over the next couple of months we'll have time to really dial in the setup work and work out some of those things that maybe aren't ideal right now. But hats off to the guys who have gotten it this far along. There's been a lot of sim days. One of my full-time teammate Nick Yoli, he's like the sim god, and he's been doing a lot of sim days at BMW in Munich, working on setup work and trying to solve issues that we've had in the first couple tests. So that's proven to be working so far, and it's all paying off here on the track today.
And finally, the car that I think I saw the most social media love of, the Cadillac. The big, heavy Chevy, the car that sounds like a Gen 4 plate racing car, but a road racing car. Good-looking Dallara chassis, good-looking Cadillac bodywork. It's an improvement, actually, sound-wise, over the previous generation DPI. Now, we actually got 2 different interviews on the Cadillac because it seemed like it was a very fast machine. 2 teams running this car this weekend, this week. It's not the weekend, David. Get Chip Ganassi Racing, which of course joined the Cadillac ranks a little bit later than most, and Action Express Racing. They'll each have 1 car in the 2023 WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. Now, we focus on Ganassi, not because we have any bias against Action Express, but because we have some connections in IndyCar. And we got to talk to, first, not Andy O'Gara. Mike O'Gara. Mike O'Gara. There's a lot of O'Garas. They're all related. We love them, but sometimes their names get confusing. We talked to Mike O'Gara at Chip Ganassi Racing, and he gave us some insight to the development work on the car. And we also talked to Sebastian Bourdais. Welcome back, Sebastian Bourdais, to the David Land channel, because Sebastian, I think, is one of the most insightful drivers in the paddock, no matter where that is, whether we're talking IMSA, whether we're talking IndyCar. And it was really fun to get his sense of what it's like to develop a race car.
There are a lot of chassis changes as well. There are things called third springs and dampers on the car that we haven't had on these cars before. The hybrid's the biggest one. It's an all-new engine. It's the same sort of format that we've been running, a naturally aspirated V8, but it is a new engine for Chevrolet or for GM. So in recent tests, the hybrid's actually been pretty reliable. We're trying to figure out how all those controls work, how the energy management works, and how that affects how much energy we can deploy during a lap, but also how that affects the handling of the car. GM's working on the control systems for the electronic brakes and the regen and all that stuff. So it's a big collaborative effort. There's an army of laptops that are going to be around the cars, but it's an exciting time for sure.
It's like a baby. You just kind of get to form it your way and put your fingerprint on it. So it's always pretty cool. I just love the challenge of kind of identifying issues and finding solutions. And the thing is, as I get older, the process is getting shorter and more sorted without the driver, because there are so many simulation tools and tools in general to sort out the cars. And so they hit the ground running. It's kind of almost annoying because it takes us quite a bit out of the equation. But it's always a fun process, and this one was no different. The car is very well born though. There's a lot of potential straight out of the box. So it's going to be interesting to see where we fare once racing starts to get going.
And you were fast right out of the box. You had a bit of a late start today. Do you feel that affects you at all, or were you able to kind of hit the ground running, like you said?
Yeah, I mean, we came here once already, so we had a bit of an idea of where we were going to be. But we keep taking downforce off to hit the aero numbers, which again is coming up really soon. So that was the first time I think that we're really, really inside the box as far as downforce and drag numbers were concerned. So it doesn't really seem to change much of anything, to be honest, which is kind of surprising. I think it tells you how much mechanical grip you're getting from those Michelin tires, because you trim the car like 10% and then all of a sudden it kind of feels the same. So it's interesting. But regardless, it's a fun process, and the car kind of hit the ground running. The guys are doing a really good job, and we're just gonna have to keep digging to make it really good, which is kind of exciting because I feel like where the BOP is going to intervene is going to be a bit less. So putting it back to the best team at sorting the cars out and extracting the most potential out of them, rather than fearing a BOP correction. So that's going to be quite cool to see, and obviously can't wait to get going, really.
GTP testing here from Road Atlanta. Unfortunately, we'll be unable to cover the next 2 days. We probably would have been able to cover tomorrow, Tuesday, whenever you're watching this. This is a Monday, if you're curious. But we just decided that, you know what, 1 day is probably enough testing to get a decent sense for you guys, the viewers, of what these GTP cars are all about. But fear not, we'll probably be at the December test for IMSA and these GTP cars, where the mystery fourth manufacturer, not so much a mystery because it's Porsche, will be there and testing as well with Team Penske. So, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed the coverage from Petit Le Mans and the bonus IMSA testing coverage for 2023.